A rare luxury for a modern game developer is the existence of multiple established continuums within their catalog. Having one series with a long-running narrative is commendable enough, but doing crossovers with the rest of your work and still have it feel natural almost feels like a lost art these days. Rockstar Games used to be a perfect example of managing an interconnected universe, most notably with their PS2 era offerings or even the GTA 4 trilogy. Insomniac Games and Naughty Dog frequently hid Easter eggs to the other team's key franchises as well, and most notably for today's video, RGG Studio has had multiple instances of fun cameos all across their catalog. My favorite instance of this particular design philosophy can be found in the connection between the mainline Yakuza games and their most prominent spin-off series, Judgment. The fact both of these series commonly take place in Kamurocho might make a newcomer to the franchises feel like crossovers between them would be inevitable. But quite the contrary. For one thing, the initial promotional material surrounding the first Judgment game made it feel like this would, for all intents and purposes, be its own franchise, with only passing mentions of grander organizational structures relevant to mainline Yakuza, like for example, the existence of the Tojo clan. And even then, the Matsugane family that became one of Judgment's main narrative focal points just operates as a random Yakuza family, having never been mentioned in the mainline entries or requiring the player to have in-depth knowledge of the Tojo's power struggles over time. The point is that Judgment acknowledges the most basic facts surrounding Kamurocho's identity, but then proceeds to lead its own iteration down a completely different pathway. Judgment shows you what the district is like from the perspective of a more quote-unquote average civilian than someone like Kiryu, a person who partakes in Yakuza power struggles for the vast majority of his screen time in the series. Even looking at the franchise through the perspective of Akiyama, technically another civilian in Kamurocho, neither of these examples truly compare to the version of the district seen through Yagami's eyes. His history with the underworld is the result of coincidence, for the most part, as one of his father figures and his agency partner have or had ties to the Yakuza. He didn't join the Tojo. His interactions with its remnants are the byproduct of him pursuing justice while navigating the lawful side of the city, a side that can be felt all across Kamurocho in Judgment. You can be arrested if you take too long in a combat encounter. You have to maintain social connections to ensure your agency gets work to begin with. You don't have the luxury of people coming to you due to your pre-established wealth, nor are you a legendary Yakuza whose help is needed to prevent an oncoming war. Because of all of these individual elements, it means that there is no reason for Yagami or his closest associates to ever interact with the main cast of Yakuza unless the story organized a contrivance to achieve this. This was the premise we went with during the first game. So, if the initial situation was like what I described, then how do we start getting so many cameos after this game? Well, the explanation is a bit more involved. After the release of Judgment, a decision has been made apparent to have mainline Yakuza entries adapt a turn-based combat approach moving forward. But seeing as RGG's work up to then was synonymous with satisfying beat-em-up combat, the choice to have the Judgment series maintain that legacy alongside the Ichiban saga made perfect sense, provided it would be financially feasible. And so, the year after Yakuza 7, we saw the release of the widely acclaimed Lost Judgment, and with it, the most blatant examples of the pre-existing lines separating the two series starting to get blurred. In Chapter 9, we visit Survive Bar, one of the rare places in Ijincho that is free of underworld infighting. So while meeting there does make sense for the story's progression, seeing a particular bartender so prominently in this continuum was surely a bit of a shock to the average fan. Then, in Chapter 10, former Liumang leader Zhao can be seen preparing a meal for prominent LJ characters. Again, an unexpected cameo considering the original Judgment's approach to exploring its world. Beyond this, LJ in general bears quite the hybrid identity in its design choices, boasting more influences from the Yakuza games than before, and stepping back from some of the uniqueness that the first Judgment game introduced, yet still feeling like an experience befitting of both series titles. It goes a long way to explain why people tend to list the two Judgment games right alongside mainline Yakuza when talking about the must-play games to understand the main timeline. Having said that, it's not like we directly engaged in conversation with the mainline cast here. And even if we did, it's not like we had Kaito go out of town and end up fighting Kiryu or some... Wait a minute. Yes, horrible segue aside, the existence of End the Destruction in Like a Dragon Gaiden, even though we were spoiled over it due to Famitsu's screenshots, was the biggest what the hell moment that the community had in a while. Obviously, the sub-story is amazing. Getting to fight Kaito twice, and taking on a group of enemies with him and Higashi is inexplicably phenomenal for anyone that loves both series. But what makes the prospect of such an addition feel genuinely believable, and not just blatant fan service? Well, going back to Yagami for a bit, even though he is very much on the side of the law, both through his detective agency as well as his defendant interventions at key moments in the two Judgment games, the nature of his work does require occasional interactions with the underworld. This obviously extends to his partners as well, and as we've seen, they can't be picky about the jobs that they take. They're still building their reputation as a detective agency. And with how the changes in the Yakuza world have led crime to become decentralized, for lack of a better word, you simply have to follow a case's trail to the most unexpected of places at times, even if one such place may be the Omi's playground. The fact the aforementioned sub-story doesn't overstay its welcome, coupled with this contextual build-up, is why such overlaps are so commendable, cause it would have been easy for RGG to fill much of Gaiden's side content with a bunch of Judgment references to make up for that franchise's shaky future. Fans would love it. But even when you have a shared world like this at your disposal, there are certain boundaries that you just don't cross this early. The way the Yokohama 99 agency would be integrated into Infinite Wealth is a testament to that, as it bore a strong resemblance to how LJ treated its cameos and didn't use Gaiden's sub-story as an excuse to go further, lest it had a good reason for it. Most recently with Pirate Yakuza, the only case of another overlap is seen in how Kaito, Higashi, and Sugiura can be recruited into your ship crew, comparable to how the trio could be used in Gaiden's Colosseum, though that particular instance had more interactivity to it. In essence, the reason why these brief interactions are so great is because they're unexpected, but not beyond belief. Important information is hard to come by, so if all-knowing individuals like the florist or Akame aren't at your disposal, why wouldn't you ask the help of some local detectives? And in case your paths occasionally cross, you can cooperate with them without it feeling like the writers had no other way to write themselves out of a corner. To take it a step further, I could honestly see a more elaborate side game happening in the future, where the entire story is written as a back and forth between Yakuza's and Judgment's cast. One side could navigate the underworld's darkest parts, while the other grounded the chaos from individuals protected by the law. It would take a ton of effort on the writer's part, but the way these continuums were built would allow for it, and that's what's important for today's discussion. Now, contrary to popular belief, Lost Judgment is not the first case of unique overlaps happening between a Yakuza spin-off and the mainline entries. Obviously, we're not talking about Dead Souls or the Samurai games here, though Infinite Wealth canonizing them via Yume was an endearing development. Actually, the first proper instance of crossovers could be found in the often overlooked Kurohyo games. We've had the protagonist Ukiyo Tatsuya go to the florist to gather information on important cast members in the critical path. We could interact with Yuya at Club Stardust. We could even see Hana and Akiyama in the background of locales like Kyushu No. 1 and the Cabaret Club respectively. There was also this one instance where Tatsuya crosses paths with a fake Kiryu, humorously referring to him as Dojima's dog, and just generally speaking, with the nature of Kurohyo's stories, it would have honestly been easier for RGG to do some higher levels of overlap here than it would be with Judgment, cause Kurohyo is genuinely inseparable from Yakuza conflicts, and is more tightly connected to the mainline series even from its namesake alone. In retrospect, this makes me appreciate the efforts that went into the Judgment crossovers even more, as even if the prospect of a third game is currently far-fetched, we still get to see that the core cast is genuinely doing well. Hopefully, we will see more of these cameos in the future, as despite the whole debate of sub-stories existing in a line independent from the critical path, there are still cases like Kiryu in Yakuza 6, referencing a sub-story from Yakuza 4 stating the contrary. So, who is to say that Kaito won't reminisce over his fights with Kiryu while telling Yagami about his own adventures. Well, a man can dream. With all that said, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed this brief look at Yakuza's cameo history. Let me know what your favorite case of it was, and if there are any other crossovers you would like to see in a future RGG game. So, until next time, take care of yourselves, and have a great day. Cheers!